Let me start by setting the context here for this webinar. If you don't know us at World Trade Center Utah yet, World Trade Center Utah leads Utah's international business development and elevates the state's global status to try to increase prosperity for the state and to help Utah companies to export and to attract foreign direct investment back into the state. So it's our job on behalf of the state to go out and help Utah companies all across the state, all across all various industries, to find new international markets and to export to those new international markets in a smart way. And we do that in partnership with some incredible partners, including UAMI. Talinda Larson, Executive Director of UAMI, is here on the webinar today. You'll be hearing from her very soon, as is Brent. Excuse me. I just think of him as Brent. In any case,
Strong.
Sorry?
Brent Strong.
Strong, that's right, Brent Strong, you'll forgive me, who's the Chief Technology Officer for UAMI and is the former global head of SAMPI, who I believe all of you in the industry will know that association very well. In any case, we're here today to talk about how companies in the composite space, in the advanced manufacturing and material space can find new export opportunities. We're going to hear from Talinda Larson a bit about what UAMI can provide and what her experience has been. We're going to hear from Brent, who will give you his personal experience as an entrepreneur and a business owner as he went and found new markets abroad. And then you'll hear from me a bit as we talk about how World Trade Center Utah can help your business to find and expand into new international markets. There will be an opportunity for live question and answer at the end. If you have a question come into your mind during the course of the webinar, please feel free to type it into the chat. When we get to the Q&A portion of this webinar, Hannah will begin reading those questions out for Talinda, Brent, and myself to answer. I think the last thing before I turn it over to Talinda that I want to mention is that one of the great resources available to you and to all Utah manufacturers is the Utah Industry Resource Alliance, which World Trade Center and UAMI are a part of. This industry alliance is made up of a number of organizations from the University of Utah, Impact Utah, Utah State University, and others that I've mentioned, the Utah Manufacturers Organization, whose whole goal is to support the growth the growth of Utah's manufacturers in a number of different ways. And if you haven't yet learned about what the UIRA can do for you, I encourage you all to go to visit utahira.org. That's utahira.org. It's worth your time. I'd love to talk to you about all the various resources available to help your company survive through COVID and thrive afterwards. So with that being said, Talinda, let me turn it over to you. We're excited to hear from you this morning.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. And I have to say, congratulations to World Trade Center for forging through and having these virtual trade missions at a time in COVID where we were staying at home, the international travel, the whole export market has been challenged with everything related to the pandemic. So congratulations to the World Trade Center for continuing and having trade missions and events like this. And UAMI has been participating with World Trade Center on several of these trade missions and have been specifically, Brent Strong has been working to find companies for the individual trade missions to introduce and connect companies to specific needs around the world. And he'll tell us more once he comes in. Have you seen him come in yet? No. Okay, I'll have to call him again. Okay, and as Jim said, this is all brought to you courtesy of Utah's Industry Resource Alliance. UIRA received CARES funding, and as part of the CARES funding, we have been implementing programs. We have 17 separate programs that have been put into place or being put into place to help the Utah manufacturers recover from the impacts of COVID-19 and eventually go on to thrive. And one area is improving revenues. One way to improve revenues is to export your products to the global market. And that's where the World Trade Center can be very helpful in putting together connections for you and to put together programs. I am very happy to have created this initiative with UIRA. Um, World Trade Center has had several webinars on a very general level about how to export and trade missions. And thanks to Hannah Hunt's efforts and Jim's efforts, we decided to put one specifically for manufacturing. So manufacturing companies can understand what the opportunities are for exporting. And while I go try and find Brent, he's not on yet, right? Jim, if you would take it from there and just talk about some of the ways that manufacturers can get into the global market?
Absolutely. Thanks to Linda. While we wait for Brent, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. I think I failed to do that. My name's Jim Porter. I think most of you on the call know me. I'm the Director of Business Development for World Trade Center Utah. And as part of my role, I help Utah companies find new markets and expand into them through a number of different services we're going to discuss today. But before we dive into all the various services that are available to you, partly because the state funds us and partly through our private membership funding, let me talk a little bit about my experience talking to exporters, and in particular to composites exporters. When I talk to exporters, I find that most of them fit, or when I talk to companies who are looking at increasing their exports, a lot of them fit into two different categories. The first category is companies that have begun exporting kind of on an ad hoc basis. Someone reached out to them from Turkey or from France or from Indonesia or somewhere else and said, hey, I'm really interested in what you could provide. What do you think? Could you fill my need? And in that case, one of you guys might be, you might have filled an order a few times. You might have an ongoing relationship with one or two countries. It could be that you had a friend in another country, or maybe you are a missionary in a country, and you've done a little bit of business back and forth. It probably hasn't been terribly regular. Or it hasn't been a huge revenue driver for you at this point. The other category of companies I talk to all the time are companies that have not yet been able to capture any international revenue, any international sales, because they know that they don't know what the risks are. And they're worried about taking those risks and what it could mean for their business, worried about losing their brand, losing control of their IP. For a number of reasons, going international can sometimes feel a little daunting. And so both of these groups, both companies who have exported a little bit or a little bit ad hoc, and companies that haven't yet exported, even if they've received inquiries because they don't understand what the risks are, how to mitigate those risks. Both those companies need to hear the same thing, which is that exporting is a commitment, and it takes a lot of an investment, not only an investment of your capital, but of your time and your mental capacity and your employees. But if you make that investment and you proactively think about how you can export, if you develop an export plan, many composites companies can be in a really strong position to grow, because there's so much demand for this expertise, this niche expertise that your companies have. There's a demand for that all around the globe. World Trade Center Utah with UAMI takes something like 6 to 10 companies every year to a show called JEC. That's the largest international composite show outside the United States. And I'm always surprised at that show, just the number of buyers from outside the United States who are so interested in our Utah companies because we're so good at what we do. And so there's a lot of opportunity for you. The question in your mind ought to be, how do I prepare to take advantage of it? How do I mitigate those risks? And what resources are available for me to mitigate the costs of doing something like going to a trade show like JEC? Or where can I find information about markets? Tell me where to focus first. Or maybe I have this relationship already with a buyer in a country. How do I expand on that relationship? How do I do more business in that country? And that's where World Trade Center Utah can be valuable. To Linda, how are we doing on Brent? How's he doing? Oh, you're still on mute.
I am sorry. I talked to him 10 minutes before the call and he
That's all
was
right.
to dial in and now it's going to voicemail. And he texted me, I'm on my way, but I don't know what that means.
Good. Well,
So I
we'll
guess
see him
we just
soon. In the meantime, you're all going to have to suffer through me a little bit more. So let me tell you about what World Trade Center Utah is here to do. You know, we were created in 2007 under then Governor John Huntsman to be a resource for Utah businesses who were looking to export. And so over the course of the last 13 years, we've developed some fairly sophisticated capabilities to help Utah companies to grow. And the first thing that we do, if you were to come to me at World Trade Center Utah and say, I want to export, the first thing I'm going to do is sit you down and take an assessment of your company. I want to understand what capabilities you have, and I want to understand where the gaps are in your capabilities that might keep you from being a successful exporter. For example, many compliance companies that I talk to have some understanding of international compliance issues. You have heard the phrase ITAR before, international traffic and arms regulations that are administered by the Defense Department. But many composites companies I know of, while they may be registered with DDTC, or they may have sent an export once or twice, they don't have necessarily the in-house ITAR compliance capabilities to ensure that this new sale is completed in a compliant manner. That's just one example of the kinds of gaps that I'm looking for. But I'm also looking for things more generally. I want to learn a little bit about how your finances are. Do you have the kind of cash flow to sustain a little bit extended cash cycle? Are you able to offer credit terms to buyers overseas, et cetera? I'm also interested in what kinds of employees you have and what their experience has been. Have you exported before? If so, to where? Do you have employees with language capabilities? Do you have employees that understand the logistics challenges of going overseas and how to mitigate those challenges? In any case, that's the first thing we're going to do. Most companies don't necessarily understand what the scope of work is. And so what I can do is sit down and help you understand what capabilities you are going to need, either in-house or through service providers or other partners you can contract with to handle those capabilities. We can also offer you training. So if this is something that you're really interested in, one of the first things that you ought to do with World Trade Center is figure out when our next export boot camp is going to be, or export tech training program, or what other training programs are available to help you understand what it takes to go international. And so World Trade Center can provide that training directly to your company. And we also provide group trainings all across the state. So no matter where you're located, it's likely that we're going to have a training available for you sometime within the next year or so. Now, of course, COVID's made that a little bit more difficult. We're still adapting, thinking about how to provide virtual training, but know that training is available for your employees and for your company so that you can figure out exactly what it's going to take and have an understanding of the scope of work beforehand. But let's assume you're ready to go. Let's assume you really want to make an investment. We understand where the gaps are in your capabilities. The first thing we want to do is help to outline the opportunity for you. So what we're going to do is a global opportunity report. That report is going to help you to figure out where are the 4 or 5 countries where I really ought to be spending my time, where I really need to do a little bit more research, where there's really opportunity for me. And what we're going to do is we subscribe to a number of resources, a number of databases that help us, that give us the data that we need to be able to pull that information. So let's say that you're selling into, we're talking to composites companies. So really we're talking about life sciences in many cases. We're talking about automotive in other cases. We're talking about aerospace and defense products in other cases. And then we're also talking about outdoor related products. So let's say you're building bicycle wheels, right? Or the rims on bicycle wheels out of your and that maybe it's a thermoplastic product that you're providing. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our databases and we're going to find where people are buying high-end bicycles, where people care about lightweight, having lightweight bicycles, where mountain biking is in particular, or even road biking is popular. And from there, we're going to figure out where people have the income to purchase bicycle rims like that. But we're also going to look at where people spend a lot of time outdoors. And by gathering all that data together, we can get a pretty good look at which countries are the highest opportunity countries, the highest opportunity markets for your business. This is something we've done with hundreds of companies across the state to this point. A good example of companies we've done this for would be Electric Power Systems up in Logan. It's a battery manufacturer, or ACT Aerospace, who you all probably know down in Gunnison. You all probably know Brett down there. Or Conductive Composites. I don't know if Nate Hansen is on the call today, but we've done some, I see him there. We've done some work with Nate as well, trying to help them figure out where there might be good opportunities for their really niche products. And they're fantastic products that they produce there out of the Heber Valley and out of Emory County. And I'm droning on a little bit. Maybe this is a good time while we're waiting for Brett to open up for questions. But essentially, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to help you understand the opportunity. Once we get a sense of what those key markets are going to be for you, what we're going. That's right. Justin Ord is also here. I know Justin. He came and participated in an export boot camp. In any case, what we can do from there, and this is a new capability that we've added, is we're going to do some market sizing for you. What we can do is prepare what's called a market prospectus for you, where we're going to determine your sales potential in that market, what we think you could accomplish in the next 3 or 4 years as a result of the size of the market, how it's growing, what the competitive situation is in that market. We're also going to look at the risk factors for you specifically in that market, both at a general political level, but also at a commercial level, right? Understanding what the commercial environment looks like, if your buyers have access to finance, or what their outstanding DSO might be, and if they're going to expect payment terms from you. We can also help you to estimate what some of the initial costs are going to be for going into market. And that can be anything from a compliance plan, translating marketing materials, updating your website, getting some legal work done, understanding your tax and tariff burden, what your total landed cost is going to be in market. These are all things that we can help you put together so that when you're really ready to, or so that you can make a smart decision for your business and understand what the obstacles really are going to be. And most importantly, what the opportunity is really going to be for your business. And that's what we're going to handle in-house for you here at World Trade Center. But beyond that, what we're going to do is, once you say, I'm go, I want to pursue opportunities in this market, then we can provide a number of different resources for you to take advantage of, from STEP grants, which provide reimbursements for international business development activities, anything from travel to trade show registrations, website development, compliance testing, et cetera, to a number of partners who will provide you anything from the translation you need, CE or CCC certifications, ISO certifications through the UIRA. But we can also help you get to market. We can take you to trade shows across the world that you may be interested in participating in. We also organize trade missions, as Linda mentioned before. These are opportunities for you to get on the ground with a delegation of Utah's business and civic leaders to help you open doors with potential customers. And we can also do some B2B matchmaking. Once you're in the ground and market, we can help you find potential customers, meet with potential distributors or others who could validate your product, your pitch and market, and move forward. And I'm droning on a bit. So while we're waiting for Brent, to Linda, if it's okay with you, let's open it up for questions.
Yeah, well, I can kick off a couple of questions. One is, how do companies access your services? Is there like a registration process, and how much do they cost to the company?
That's a great question. Right now, the way to access these services is to email me. My email, and I'll put it in the chat, is jporter@wtcutah.com. Feel free to email me. You can also call me or text me. My number is 435-512-1890. Like I said, I'll throw that there in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to take advantage of these services. So right now, the market research that we're providing is at no cost, and that's thanks to CARES Act funding and some of the other resources that we have available. And so you can come in and get some of that information for us at no cost. And then taking advantage of some of the other services, right? Partners who are going to do translation for you. That's all going to be paid. You're going to work that out depending on the project with the resource provider. But the great news is that you can utilize the STEP grant, which is available through World Trade Center Utah and is free to use, to reimburse yourself for some of those costs and help you to mitigate some of the cash impact of making an investment in something like translated marketing materials or a compliance plan. I think there was a question from Jared. Sorry, go ahead, Linda.
Basically, your services are at no cost, but
Right.
third-party services is what they have to contract for.
Correct.
And how big of a staff does a company need to get into the international global market?
That's a great question. I'll tell you that what's most important is not the number of staff. Staff is important uh, for things like having the capacity to do some of this work. You need someone who can own the international side for sure. So it's not like having a certain number of employees isn't important, but I know businesses who have less than 10 employees who've been very successful overseas. And I know businesses who have hundreds of employees that haven't yet taken the plunge to go overseas. So here's what I would tell you as far as when is a company ready to export? The first thing I would say is, are you in a growth mindset? If this is your company, if you own the company, or if you're a senior executive in the company, are you a company that is committed to growth and wants to add jobs, wants to find new opportunities? If so, then you're going to be in a good position to take advantage of the services that we have to offer. And in part, that's because everything that you need to do to export successfully, or almost everything, can be done with service providers. So you don't necessarily have to hire people right away in order to be a successful exporter if you know how to use partners well. And that's something World Trade Center Utah can help you do. So that's what I'd say. Are you in a growth mindset? Are you able to commit resources to things like travel to international markets? Are you willing to commit things to charges for things like B2B matchmaking? Or are you willing to take some of your staff's time and put it on some new business development projects? Right, going international is going to take at minimum, it's going to take 3 to 6 months, really, for you to go international, and to do it in a proactive way.
But before
And so,
you,
are you willing to put staff on? Are you willing to put staff on notice and make staff responsible for that work and give them the time that they need to be successful doing it?
but it
It's
sounds
it's a bit
like,
of a softer question than you would expect.
yeah, but it sounds like you'll help up front, help them understand the market, help them understand the revenue potential, and then you can budget FTEs and resources accordingly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We do have questions. So do you want to take Jared's question?
Absolutely. I think I saw, and I'm sorry, Hannah, I'm taking your role here. Jared, I think, asked about any planned trade missions that we have. So this year has been an interesting year, obviously, for everybody. What we've done is we've moved to a virtual format for trade missions. So in April, we had a virtual trade mission to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which was a fantastic opportunity. And to Linda knows, created some opportunities for some composites companies, with a company called Strata out there who does a lot of procurement for the UAE's aerospace industry. In any case, fantastic opportunity. We had a virtual trade mission with Israel and met with their Ministry of Defense. If anyone's interested in an introduction to the people at the Ministry of Defense office in New York, we're happy to make that introduction for you. If you're looking to find work, we've also done virtual trade missions with Canada and with India. We're probably planning one with Australia. And so those are exciting. But Jared's question isn't what we've done. Jared's question is, what are you doing next year? And so the hope is next year we'll be in a place where we'll be able to take companies again in person to these markets. And I suspect that we'll probably do one trade mission, and it'll be a little bit later next year. Now, none of this is set in stone, I'll tell you, and that's because of the uncertainty that COVID has afforded us. And so, but our plan is at least one trade mission, and we expect that trade mission to go to Mexico next year, probably later next year would be the only planned trade mission we have at this point. If we have the opportunity to take a second trade mission, it will go to Korea, South Korea, and to Japan. So know that those are available, but we're also planning trade mission or trade show opportunities next year as well, starting in March with the JEC show, which you should all be thinking about. That show is the largest international composite specific show. I think they get upwards of 45 to 50,000 attendees every year. It's something like 2,500 exhibitors, a huge number of exhibitors, fills a bunch of different halls. I'm trying to think through the countries that I saw represented there. Everyone from Turkey, China, all the Western European nations, a number of Eastern European nations, Brazil, Chile. Oh man, it's just incredible. It's an incredible show, and one where you can learn a lot about what the international composite space looks like. For those of you who are in the aerospace and defense industry, we're also planning to attend the Paris Air Show. That will be in mid to late June of this next year. That's really the world's largest air show in the world, and both a defense and commercially focused show, and a good opportunity to grow, to meet good contacts and potentially grow your business outside the United States. Everyone shows up to the Paris Air Show. There's more than 100,000 people every other year. It's incredible. And then, one more aerospace and defense trade show is DSEI. That's the Defense and Security Equipment International Expo, which will be in London in September, which is a bit more of a short-term oriented show. It's a great show. If any of you are producing things like ammo, ammunition, or body armor, things that land forces could use, it's a really good show for you. I'd ask you to reach out to me so we can talk more about the opportunity there. We're also, I'll stop there. There's a lot of shows going on. Hannah, let's make sure to send out the calendar of events, the proposed calendar events to the people on this call afterwards.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tilda.
How does a company get on board to join the WTC mission? Do they just raise their hand, or do you invite them, or is it by invitation only?
So everyone who participates, all the businesses who participate in a trade mission or a show, almost always get a STEP grant. So what you would do is you would come and talk to Nicole Sherwood, or you would talk to me, or you'd talk to Aaron Starks in our office and learn a bit about the opportunity. We'd help you figure out if it's a good fit for you. If it is a good fit, then what we'd say is apply for a STEP grant to help you get funding to participate in our booth and attend the show. And in that case, you would fill out an application, and it's a competitive application, right? You have a number of businesses vying for the same pot of funds and vying for the same spots in our booth. And assuming that you apply successfully and you're awarded a grant, then you're locked in to come on a trade mission or come to a show with us. Now, let's say you don't get a STEP grant. That's not the end of the world. One, you can always come and get some coaching from us on how to put together a good STEP grant application. If you've gotten some market research from us, and you've gone through the assessment, you know what your capabilities are, you know what your goals are for the next few years, we can help you put together a fairly competitive application. But even if you end up not being eligible for STEP or not being able to get STEP for whatever activity you're hoping to get it for, you can still come, right? You can still participate in anything we want to do. You can come and walk the show or have your own booth or be a part of the booth. You just may not be able to get a STEP grant to do it.
I hope you keep up the virtual trade missions. They are really good. They provide such a nice overview. They're informal, small. Well, some of them are a little more formal, but I hope you kind of add that to the repertoire of World Trade Center and keep them going into next year.
I think we will. And even to Linda, I think into the future, what we'll do is we'll preview trade missions with virtual trade missions. So let's say next year we're going to go to Mexico later in the year. What would be a best case scenario is that sometime probably in May or early June, we do a virtual trade mission to Mexico to make some initial introductions. And then we organize the in-person visits for later that year to build off the relationships that we started building on a virtual trade mission. So absolutely, that's something that we're looking to do. I'm seeing a question here from John Kimball. Do you mind if maybe I'll answer that one and then we'll turn the time over to Brent to talk about his experience. Brent, good to see you on. So John said, I run a second-year startup where we design and manufacture RF wireless antenna systems selling to the global market, military, government agencies, private professional industries. We currently operate out of rural North Idaho during COVID and enjoy buying power for metal there with our CNC factory. We are experiencing growing pains and ready to expand home to Utah or raise my kids in Holiday. Very nice. We definitely want you to come back to Utah. To find further manufacturing output, redundancy, et cetera. Would enjoy learning how to best re-enter World Trade Center Utah network and have to back out for a flight soon. Thank you. Oh, that's just a good note from John. John, if you're looking to come back to Utah to establish some operations here, please reach out to me. I'm going to bring in some other people from my office and also from EDC Utah to help you figure out how to make that move and also how to participate in our programs. So John didn't really have a question there for me. So I'll stop now. You don't have to listen to me anymore, and you can listen to Brent Strong, who's really the hero of this webinar, who will talk about his experiences abroad. As I mentioned before, Brent is the Chief Technology Officer for UAMI and also was the former global president of SAMPI. Brent's experience and knowledge are vast, and it's worth your time on this webinar alone just to hear from Brent, what he has to say and to hear his experiences. Brent, I think you'll have to unmute yourself, but please go ahead.
Should be in the lower left corner.
There, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Yes.
Sorry, folks, for being late. I got the wrong time. I guess that comes from being a geezer. I really had a great experience with the WTC this year. There were various companies and countries that we interacted with. And in each case, someone from the WTC, Courtney especially, would line me up with a teleconference, and we would talk with these various entities. Let me start with the easy one. It was in the United Arab Emirates, and it happened to be a company called Strata. Strata is a subcontractor to Boeing, and they are currently making the vertical tail section for the 787, which is exactly the same product that Boeing is making in Salt Lake City at their, well, actually at both plants. And but they're doing the same work that's being done at the Boeing plant near the airport. It turns out that my son is the liaison engineer between the Boeing plant here and Strata in the United Arab Emirates. And in fact, he is over there right now living for 2 years, and he is doing the work. So I was very anxious to find out what Strata wanted. And their request is simple. They want to not only tie up first with all of the companies in Utah that are currently supplying Boeing in Utah. Turns out there aren't too many of those. And that poses a little bit of a problem because Strata would like to have more than one supplier out of Utah. They'd like to have other parts that are made in some other place like Wichita or someplace, and they would like to source them from Utah. It makes it easier for them to ship everything and bundle their shipments and so on. So what we would have to do is find companies in Utah that can become qualified for alternate products on the 787 vertical tail. And we would like to do that. And Boeing in Utah is willing to cooperate with us. And so but I don't know how to find the companies in Utah that want to be, that can pick a part that they would like to be qualified on and work to become qualified there. I would like to help them. Boeing would like to help them. Strata would like to help them. But I think the company needs to go to Boeing, talk through their purchasing procedures, see if there are some parts that the company can make, and then work to become qualified. Okay, so that's Strata in the United Arab Emirates. The plant is actually located in Abu Dhabi, and it's at a little town called Al Ain. And that's about an hour and a half outside of the city of Abu Dhabi, and also about an hour and a half outside of the city of Dubai. My son, for instance, is going to live in Dubai, and because there's more things to do, and then he will travel. He'll live there on the weekends, and then he'll travel during the week and live in Al Ain. Okay, the second is a neighbor to the UAE, and that's Saudi Arabia. In this case, we talked to the government agency that is responsible for trying to bring new business into Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis are absolutely committed to reduce their dependency on oil. I have a former graduate student of mine who is Jordanian by birth, and he is living in Saudi working for a plastics company that is attempting to diversify the plastics industry in Saudi Arabia. And the government's very serious about it. And in particular, they will pick a product that is needed and then go and try and find companies that make that product. And the product that they came to us with is prosthetic feet. Turns out that we have at least 3 companies, 3 that I know of, that are in Utah that make prosthetic feet. So I approached all 3 of those companies and asked them if they had some interest in working with the Saudis and establishing some relationship. One of the companies did not. They are owned out of Europe, and they felt that anything that was done with Saudi Arabia would be done by the parent company in Europe and not local here. And that, of course, is reasonable. The other 2 companies showed some interest, and one of them in particular picked it up. And they began one-to-one direct conversations with the Saudis. And I don't know the status of that, but I'm quite encouraged that that company was forward looking, and they picked up the opportunity and began to discuss with the Saudis. And I don't know if there's investment involved or whatever. I didn't get involved, but it certainly is an opportunity for prosthetic companies. And I imagine at some point related industries like prosthesis might also get involved in that same thing. So that was a good opportunity. The other 2 companies, the other 2 countries are both dealing with aerospace. One of them was India. And when I was president of SAMPI, international president of SAMPI, I was invited to go to India and discuss SAMPI's role in aerospace for engineers. And I was shocked at the turnout that we had at the conference. There were several thousand people, and the aerospace industry is quite robust in India. They make their own airplane, and they are anxious to expand their aerospace industry. The airplane that they make is a military trainer. And I think that they would like to get more heavily involved. And of course, Utah is one of the 4 or 5 key areas for aerospace manufacturing. And so they obviously came here and wanted to know what we could do. One of the things that we have asked them to do is to find the kinds of parts that they would like our companies to make, but also to be aware of our companies. As you know, we've got maybe 30 or 40 companies that have heavy involvement in aerospace. And so it's a little too much for me, especially to try and identify a company because we've got too many. But if they could tell us the types of parts, then it would be easy for us to use the Connects software tool that UAMI has sponsored, originated. And we could notify all of those companies that are listed in Connects as aerospace companies that there are jobs available for India. That same thing is true with Israel, the other company. They have an even more robust military, especially manufacturing company for military aircraft. They make their own fighter jets and helicopters, and they have a very large and robust manufacturing system for aerospace. And there are several of the companies in Utah that are already supplying to Israel. And they're supplying relatively small parts, but it could be a very good business. And I think just as sophisticated as the aerospace business in the United States. Again, we would look to Israel to identify parts that they would like to purchase from Utah suppliers, and then UAMI would notify the aerospace companies in the state that this part is ready. I don't know if Tulinda has discussed what's happening with the use of Connex, but let me just tell you that we have a function in Connex called the Exchange, and the Exchange Center allows us to notify all of the companies or some of the companies of requests for information or requests for bids or proposals, all of those possibilities. And the only thing that will defeat it is if you don't register on Connex. So you need to become not only active in Connex, make sure that the notifications that come out come to you, and then make sure that all of the information about your company in Connex is marketing oriented. You're selling yourself to the world. And we are working with that tool and the WTC to try and introduce you to the world. So you need to tell people what you're great at and put it all in Connex. Okay, those were the companies that I've worked with. In the case of Israel, we have a couple of Utah companies that have stepped forward and they've said, we'd like to discuss it. I think that might work. We hope that some of those companies can develop an interaction. So the Utah companies need to be a little aggressive in stepping forward. It does take a little bit of work to do international trade, but it can be very worthwhile. Okay, is there something that I can answer for you?
Well, we have a question in the chat, in the question there. Thank you, first of all, Brent. That was a great overview of some real live opportunities that we have identified and that we've been working through in this COVID period, where even though exporting has been challenged, there are still opportunities. So Tyler has a question about, are there opportunities for companies that don't sell a product? How, for example, a machine shop?
I can take that one first, or Brent, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, yes, there are opportunities, not just for machine shops, but for service providers like engineering firms, those who are publishing software, maybe an online, like a SaaS software, if those are things that you do. The trick when if you have something more general, if you don't have a product that you're going to put in front of someone, is to show your capabilities to potential buyers and to help them understand what the value proposition for working with you are. What that value proposition is. If you have any unique capabilities, that's important to know, or if you can deliver at a certain time or a certain cost, that's important to know. It's a little bit more difficult because you have to really refine that value proposition. You know, there are machine shops in countries all around the world. Why would someone work with you when you're far away rather than someone who's a little bit closer to home? And I'm sure there's a good answer for that with your company. We just need to help you figure out what it is. And once you have that pitch down, it's much easier to help you find international buyers.
Let me help with that answer as well, Jim. Let's say that there is a company that wants to buy a motor shroud and they want to buy it out of carbon fiber. And so they contract with a Utah company to make that motor shroud. And it turns out that the company that they contract with makes the shroud, but after it has been manufactured, it needs to be trimmed cut, maybe drilled, other machine shop functions. And so if you have a machine shop like Tyler, then what you need to do is make sure that you are well known to the industry in Utah, so that when they get a job and they want to have some machining done, they can send it to you and you are approved on that part, and you can work with them, and then it gets sent overseas. So it's easier to subcontract to a Utah company, and we just need to develop subcontractors to the Utah company that really have a capability that can be depended on.
That's absolutely true. So there are several channels for you to take advantage of, for sure.
We have another question from David. What kind of certification is Boeing Strata looking for in a partnership with a Utah manufacturer?
There is a quality standard that is an aerospace-oriented quality standard, and you could talk with Boeing about what that is and the standards, and you could get qualified. If you want some guidance and help, then we have Impact Utah, the MEP, and maybe the Utah Manufacturers Association can come in and walk you through the steps that would be required to get that certification. So there's a quality certification and some other things as well, but Boeing can alert you to what those are. So I would get to know the people at Boeing, maybe even Northrop Grumman or Albany or other aerospace companies that are already qualified that might just be looking for subcontractors, and they can help you with that.
That's a great answer. Let me add on a little bit. So let's say that you do what Brent suggests and you go and you meet with the right person at Boeing, and they tell you you need to get AS 9100 certified. Now that's the basic aerospace certification. And you want to figure out how to do that. Brent was right to mention that there are a few entities in Utah who can help you get that certification. Impact Utah, Utah Manufacturers Association being the two that come to mind. MEP can also help with that as well. In any case, when you're looking to do that, and there's an international play involved, so you're making a sale to Strata, an international company, it's going to come in as international revenue. A STEP grant can also be used to help you to decrease the cost of that certification. So let's say it's going to cost you maybe $12,000 to get that done. Well, a STEP grant will cover up to 75% of the cost of that certification, or I think it's up to $6,000 in that case. But instead of it costing you $12,000, now it's costing you $6,000 to get that certification. It's much more manageable, much less cash that you have to put out to be able to get that business. So there are great resources to help you get that done here in Utah.
Wow, Jim, that's free money. That's awesome.
It is free money.
I noticed Clint Jewell is on here. Let me just tell you something about supplies. If you have a product, not a manufactured product, but a raw material, Clint sells raw material. If you have some of that, the raw material also has to be qualified. And Utah is now, UAMI is working with Hexcel, and we're trying to develop a system where we can inexpensively, relatively, qualify materials. And we want to do that for you. So if there are materials that need to be qualified that you think you can get an aerospace contract for, come and talk to us and let us see. Frankly, we're just starting with this, so we don't know exactly what to do, but we will work with Hexcel, and together we'll try and qualify some of these materials and kind of make Utah a qualification center for some of that stuff.
Fantastic. We've got a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to start reading from the first one that came in, or maybe Hannah, maybe we should turn that over to you, Hannah. In any case, I'm sorry. I'm going to not pronounce your name well. Opeyemi Asaulu asked something about purchases in West and South Africa in the engineering and procurement sectors. If you're on the call, Would you unmute yourself and help us understand what you're looking for?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
I do apologize. You did good with the name. Thank you. To the panel, that's really good. I wanted to find out, I do apologize. I have kids in the house and we're trying to do this meetings. So my question really is, I am into engineering and procurement services. I wanted to know if there are any roles, I know you spoke about those kind of works being done in Middle East and in Israel and things like that. Do you have any of those things going on in Africa, specifically West Africa or South Africa? We have a niche there, so we're trying to see, since we have that kind of connection, we can come in on the American end and try to work on those sides too.
That's a great question. And I'll tell you that I don't have purview into, everything that's going on in West and South Africa. My guess is there probably is opportunity there. And what let's do is you and I should sit down. I want to learn a little bit more about your capabilities and help you discuss options for getting some market research done, finding out what kinds of opportunities are there, potentially meeting some people who are on the ground there who could help you learn a little bit more about the opportunity. So if you have questions like this is a perfect example of when you ought to come to World Trade Center Utah to learn a little bit more, to get a little bit more, intelligence about what's going on in global markets.
Let me step in on just a couple of things. I don't know how many manufactured goods are coming out of West Africa. There's some out of South Africa, but not too many that I know of out of West Africa. However, there are natural products that are being consumed in Utah. Freeform is a company that takes natural products from all over the world and they sandwich them between plexiglass plates or plastic plates, and they use them as wall panels. Interestingly enough, they're also using carbon fiber in between the wall panels, working with Rock West. It's a great product. But Freeform would love to buy natural products from West Africa. Other companies, some of the essential oil companies also buy natural products from West Africa, and so do some of the supplemental food companies. And Utah is rich with these companies, especially down in Utah County. And so if you have natural products that could be used for essential oils or for medicinal or home remedy purposes, then you could call on these companies down in Utah County and Park City and other places. And I think that could be a nice business for you.
I'm also going to jump in. We've had a few questions actually about Africa recently, specifically in Ghana. So we are currently planning another webinar for the second week of November. It won't be manufacturing specific, but definitely one you'll want to watch out for with treating Ghana as the gateway to the rest of Africa.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank
Hannah.
you. If
Could
you
you-
can, I think you have my name. If you can send me something just in case I miss it.
Yes, absolutely.
I
Thank
think
you.
the plan is we'll send a follow-up email to everyone here on the call, and we'll include the information about that event in that email.
Thanks.
So the next question I'm seeing is from Pam Giuliano. Jim, can you speak to how World Trade Center Utah works with rural Utah, including tribal-based businesses that may have exported or have procurement interests? I assume it's similar to urban-based businesses. Yes, so the same services are available in rural Utah as urban-based businesses. The real challenge is access, right? Is the fact that we're, just like everywhere in rural Utah, we're a Salt Lake City-based entity, but we need to make sure that we are engaging well all across the state, and that companies all across the state have the opportunity to take advantage of the same services. So as a rural Utah business or as a tribal business, there are more resources available to you than there would be for a company that's right here situated along the Wasatch Front. So over the last 2 years, what we've been doing is organizing export boot camps in regions, regional export boot camps around the state. We might do 3 or 4 of these in a year that companies from all over the state can come and participate in. But we host those in rural areas so that rural businesses don't have to travel far to participate in them. These are intensive 2-day training courses. Justin Ort, I think, is someone on this call who could speak to what those are like. But as part of that programming, you're not just going to hear from World Trade Center Utah. We're going to bring out the service providers who you would want to work with to export, so that you can build relationships with them right there in your hometown, right, or close to your hometown. We want you to be able to meet Shelby Dyack with the U.S. Commercial Service, and Jim Herron with the SBDC, and Craig Perry at Par Brown, or Scott Olson, who helps companies with ITAR related issues, or Lisa McPhee from Air and Sea International, a freight forwarder. We're going to bring all these people out to you, and we're going to spend 2 days teaching companies in your area about how it is that you can export, how to export, what that's going to take. For companies who participate in those rural boot camps, if you work with us on the back end to create an export plan for your company, you become automatically eligible for our grant funding, both through the STEP grant and through additional resources, additional grant funding that's available through the U.S. Department of Agriculture that we've set aside specifically for rural and travel-based businesses. So please, if you want to participate in one of those, reach out to me. Let's talk about how we can help you participate in one of those, how we can make sure that you can find and take advantage of those export opportunities. I hope that answers your question. The next question here is from David Gale.
Sorry,
Says,
I was on mute, Jim. Thanks.
Oh,
great
Pam.
answer.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
I actually knew a little bit of that. I wanted others to hear that you have, and I stand behind this, you have some outstanding outreach services. You're always on my speed dial. So thanks for all you've done for rural Utah. Appreciate you.
It's good to hear from you, Pam. Thanks for asking and giving me a chance to brag a little bit about what we've done. So David here has a question: who is best to help with the introductions between a small business and a larger company like Boeing? Can World Trade Center Utah create that opportunity? That's a great question, and I'll start with a caveat. You know, we have a great network here at World Trade Center Utah, but I'll tell you, Boeing's a big company, and figuring out who the right person to talk to at Boeing is a whole nother question. So one of the good ways, I think, to get to know people at Boeing and to make those introductions is to start participating in more of these events, particularly events with UAMI. I think of the people I know who are best tied into some of the big defense OEMs here in the state, to Linda, Brandon, others at UAMI are really well tied in. And I'm not going to sit here and promise that they can make an introduction to whoever it is you need at Boeing, but I know of no better organization in the state of Utah that is tied into the big defense OEMs than UAMI is, and can help you think about ways to approach those OEMs, and even give you resources to help you grow.
Jim, let me just second that. We do 1 or 2 referrals a week, it seems, with small companies trying to get into big companies. And sometimes we make a really good connection. Most of the time, I hope. Sometimes we don't. But we would love to try. That's part of what we feel is our duty and our privilege. So if you would contact Linda or me, and make sure that when you do that, you're also on Connects, so that we can refer the company to your citation on Connects and they can get to know a little bit more about you, then all of those things can happen. But we would love to make an introduction for you. So just contact us and we'll refer the names.
One last note I'd include there.
To that end,
sorry, go ahead, Linda.
And to that end, we do have a matchmaking event on October 29th, where we have Northrop Grumman has identified 2 specific needs, and we are now bringing in, this is again under CARES funding, again under UIRA, we call it B2B government contracting matchmaking. Now, this particular one is very focused on a specific machining need they have, but maybe we could put together a similar kind of B2B government contracting for exporting and set it up with Boeing and some of the other OEMs. I'll put that on my to-do list.
That's exciting. Thanks to Linda. As a final note here on that question, you should know that many of the large OEMs have small business procurement offices. So they do have, they will have officials there working at Boeing or Northrop Grumman or others whose whole job it is to find subcontractors that are small businesses because of the procurement requirements the federal government makes on them. And many of you probably already know that, but those small business offices are another good place to go if you're trying to make it, if you're trying to get an introduction to the right place. So at this point, I think we're a little bit over time. So I think we'll probably cap questions there. Thank you to Linda and Brent for being on the call today. It's great to hear from you. We love the resources that UAMI provides and the community that you've built here in the state around these topics. If you have any questions about going international, or if you want to take advantage of any of the resources that we've talked about today, please reach out to me, to Brent, to Linda, to figure out how you can engage and take advantage of what we have to offer. You know, 2020 has been a crazy year, and you know, it's getting to the point where you start hearing that every other sentence. But I'll say I'm really impressed with what Utah's been able to do, and in particular what the Industry Resource Alliance has been able to do and put together to help Utah businesses, whether that being helping to increase your visibility with some of these large OEMs by participating in an amazing platform like Connects, or whether it be these virtual trade missions, or whether it be the kinds of free or discounted services that organizations like Impact Utah or the Utah Manufacturers Association or Utah State are providing as a result of CARES funding coming down, I think are really powerful. So please, like I said, let me make one more plug, utahira.org. If you have needs in your manufacturing company, you want to reach out for help, you ought to go to that website. You can use it to reach out to any of us directly, learn about any programs that are available, and take advantage of that. So thank you for joining. I hope to be hearing from many of you soon, and looking forward to a time when we can meet face-to-face again. Thank you.